So for diehard fans, it's a stone cold classic. But for the more casual listeners, you might have skipped it. Or maybe you've heard it without ever really hearing it. So listen.
She's not a girl who misses much.
Yes, you guessed it. Happiness is a Warm Gun. It's one of the boldest, weirdest, and most electrifying tracks that the Beatles ever recorded. It's not just a song, it's a trip. A controlled explosion of genres and moods and madness all crammed into under 3 minutes. It's John Lennon at his most unpredictable, unfiltered, and downright unhinged in the best way possible. And it dropped right in the middle of the White Album. A record born out of chaos, tension, and breakdowns. This wasn't just artistic drama. These sessions were brutal. Engineer Jeff Emerick walked out halfway through the album. Ringo quit the band entirely. Well, for a bit. It was that toxic. And yet, in the middle of all that, this song brought them together. It was the one track that all 4 Beatles agreed on. Even Paul, who wasn't always on the same page as John, later called it his favourite on the entire album. So how did this fractured, feuding band pull off one of the most musically complex and emotionally charged songs in their catalogue? And what exactly is Happiness is a Warm Gun even about? Let's break it open, lyric by lyric, section by section, and take a closer look at the genius behind the madness. Hey guys, well, I'm back for another Beatles video. I'm looking to hone in a lot of Beatles content for the next few months, as that's what you all seem to love about this channel. And to be honest, I love making it. So let's talk about the Beatles. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. So the song's origins trace back to the Beatles' trip to Rishikesh, India, where they explored transcendental meditation under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. You see, George loved it, but the others weren't huge fans, especially Ringo. But it was here that Lennon began experimenting with finger-picking techniques, taught to him by the folk singer Donovan, a style which you heard in the song's delicate opening. This style of finger-picking also inspired the songs Julia and Dear Prudence. But most of the song, Happiness is a Warm Gun, actually took place after Lennon returned to England. He cobbled together various lyrics and stories discussed during an LSD trip. So notably, Lennon drew the title of the song from the American Rifleman magazine, which ran a feature called Happiness is a Warm Gun. The phrase is a dark parody of Charles Schulz's Peanuts line, Happiness is a Warm Puppy, and it struck Lennon as kind of chillingly absurd, a reflection of American gun culture wrapped in satire. And while he publicly denied any connection to the drug references, Paul McCartney later acknowledged that the lyrics like I Need a Fix alluded to John's growing heroin use, indicating that the song was as much about addiction as it was about irony. I'm not so sure it was based just on that. Musically, the song is a tour de force. It lacks a traditional structure and instead presents itself as 3 seamless merged mini-songs. The track cycles for a variety of tempos and time signatures, from 4/4 to 6/8 and even 5/4 and 3/4, demanding significant precision from the band. The final section parodies 1950s doo-wop and early rock, completed with exaggerated backing vocals and sexually charged innuendo. You see, recording this piece was equally demanding, and they all began recording it on September the 23rd, 1968. The Beatles reportedly attempted over 70 takes across multiple days to finalise the rhythm track, with John playing through a painful blister. Producer Chris Thomas, filling in for George Martin, remarked on the sheer number of takes with dry humour, saying, "Take 83? Sessions were characterised by experimentation, which includes overdubs of organs, fuzz guitars, tuba, and layered harmonies." According to the demo recording, the song initially included a small section that contained the lyric, Yoko oh no, Yoko oh no, oh yes, which was eventually dropped. But it's the lyrics that I really want to talk about. They sort of paint a startling picture of where John Lennon was at this point in time, and I think that's something that I want to focus on. We can just throw them away and attribute them to the Lennon Beatles nonsense, but I think the descriptions and the poetry within the lyrics actually have a bit of a deeper meaning, and I want to know where these stem from. So the majority of the first verse comes from various conversations shared by Lennon, his old school friend Pete Shotton, Neil Aspinall, and press officer Derek Taylor while on LSD. She's well acquainted with the touch of a velvet hand. Well, this actually alludes to a time that a fetishist told Derek that wearing moleskin gloves gave him a little bit of an unusual sensation when I'm out with my girlfriend. Derek said, "I told a story about a chap my wife Joan and I met in the Carrick Bay Hotel on the Isle of Man. It was late one night drinking in the bar, and this local fellow who liked meeting holidaymakers and rapping to them suddenly said to us, 'I like wearing moleskin gloves, you know. It gives me a little bit of an unusual sensation when I'm out with my girlfriend.' He then said, "I don't want to go into details." So we didn't. The lizard on the window pane is a recollection from Derek when he was actually in Los Angeles. And you see, it'll be a bit different for Derek because you'd never see a lizard like that in London, whereas in Los Angeles or in America it's quite commonplace. The man in the crowd with the multicoloured mirror on his hobnail boots. Lennon and Derek both discussed a news story about a man who went around a crowded city square with mirrors on the toes of his boots so that he could secretly look up women's skirts. Derek said this: "The man in the crowd with the multicoloured mirrors on his hobnail boots was from something I'd seen in a newspaper about a Manchester City soccer fan who had been arrested by the police for having mirrors on the toe caps of his shoes so that he could look up girls' skirts. We thought this was an incredibly complicated and torturous way of getting a cheap thrill, and so that became multicoloured mirrors and hobnail boots to fit the rhythm." A bit of poetic license. And Lying with His Eyes While His Hands Are Busy Working Overtime is based on the story of a man who had a pretty unique shoplifting technique. It came from another thing I'd read, where a man wearing a cloak had fake plastic hands which he would rest on the counter of a shop while underneath the cloak he was busy lifting things and stuffing them into a bag around his waist. A soap impression of his wife which he ate and donated to the National Trust. What? Well, Derek Taylor actually explains this one too in his book A Hard Day's Right. It came from a conversation we'd had about the horrors of walking in public spaces on the Merseyside, where you will always come across evidence of people having crapped behind bushes and in old air raid shelters. So to donate what you've eaten to the National Trust is what would now be known as defecation on common land owned by the National Trust. I need a fix because I'm going down. Well, does that really need that much explanation? I think it's alluding to Lennon's heroin addiction, though some will argue that his addiction he's speaking about was really to Yoko. I Need a Fix is a common term among drug takers, and it may offer a glimpse into why he felt he needed heroin in the first place. Maybe it was to help his chaotic life at the time, the breakup of his marriage to Cynthia, and his out-of-control emotions towards Yoko. Well, Paul had this to say: "He was getting into harder drugs than we'd been into, and so his songs were taking on more references to heroin. Until that point, we'd made rather mild, rather oblique references to pot or LSD. Now John started to be talking about fixers and monkeys, and it was harder terminology which the rest of us weren't into. We were disappointed that he was getting into heroin because we didn't really see how it could help him. It was a tough period for John, but often adversity and that craziness can lead to good art, as I think it did in this case." And Mother Superior is of course Yoko. But why is she jumping the gun? Is jumping the gun maybe a metaphor for maybe acting too quick sexually? Is it more sexual innuendo?
Mother Superior, just
Mother Superior was you. She was rabbiting on in the car one day, as is her wont. And I was saying, "Oh, Mother Superior jumped the gun again," 'cause she's always one jump ahead. So that was Yoko really, that little section. And they're all separate songs, I was telling you that.
And then we get to the song's high point, its chorus if it even has one.
Happiness is a warm gun.
But is it also a possible reference to heroin too? That warm feeling after he's taken his hit. Lennon later denied this in interviews when asked, but Paul wasn't convinced that that wasn't the meaning all along. "When I feel my finger on your trigger, I know nobody can do me harm." Well, I think it's quite obvious here that he's talking about the euphoria he feels about being with Yoko, and that no one can take away that feeling he has when he's with her. Whether that be his old bandmates, his family, the press, Yoko is now everything to him, and he's saying he feels nothing like it. I think this song could be kind of a mixture, really, of trying to explain the euphoria he has with his new girlfriend, Yoko Ono, and the chaotic nature of his life as a Beatle. You gotta remember, in 1968, they were more than Beatles at this point. They were massive celebrities. They couldn't hide away from the press. John said, "They were all different segments of songs that I wrote together and stuck them all in one piece, just like a collage, instead of an album like Pepper. This was all done in one song, and it went through all the different styles of rock and roll. I love it. I think it's a beautiful song. I like all the different things that are happening in it. I had to put together 3 sections of different songs. It seemed to run through all different kinds of rock music." And as to the song's structure, Paul said it's a very interesting song because it changes tempo a lot. It's quite a complex piece. It's very Lennon. The song highlights John Lennon's complex relationship with violence, addiction, sex and satire. And I just think it's tragic noting how John died that he was the one to actually write it. So upon release, Happiness is a Warm Gun was quickly banned by some radio stations, who assumed it to be a pro-drug anthem or interpreted it as a veiled heroin reference. But John always insisted otherwise, maintaining that the song's message was poetic, humorous and satirical rather than literal.
And it also was about a gun, not about heroin or anything. And those days I had no idea about heroin. I'd never seen it, nor knew anybody that had ever touched it or taken it.
Still, like I said earlier, it's still a painful twist of fate that the song took on such a tragic resonance after Lennon's assassination in 1980. The song's influence can be traced through the decades of genre-defining music that followed. Songs like Radiohead's Paranoid Android and Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody clearly echoed Lennon's willingness to sort of abandon structure in favour of like unpredictability and emotional progression. Lennon did whatever he wanted, and it often worked. Both songs, like Happiness is a Warm Gun, have contrasting song segments and move seamlessly from one idea to the next. Similarly, the Flaming Lips' Yoshimi battles Pink Robots and the Arctic Monkeys' 505 carry forward the song's legacy of combining musical experimentation with darkly personal or ironic themes. In these works, we see how Lennon's avant-garde creativity on the White Album laid the groundwork for artists to challenge song form, blend genres, and embrace contradiction. And more than 5 decades after its release, Happiness is a Warm Gun continues to captivate audiences and critics alike, because it doesn't work to a set musical or lyrical standard. And then if you add in all the raw emotion and the technical precision from the band and the engineers, it's become a real testament to Lennon's creativity during one of his darkest periods. It captures a moment of transition for the Beatles, a snapshot of a band teetering on the edge, yet still capable of producing a masterpiece of layered meaning and innovation. Thanks very much for watching, guys. As always really appreciate it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Let me know in the comments below what video do you want me to cover next. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.